So Mating Season is the new adult cartoon made by the same team that made the hit show Big Mouth and the slightly less of a hit show Human Resources. I happened to be rewatching Big Mouth just as the new Mating Season came out, so I find myself in the ideal position to compare and critique. Before we get into why Mating Season isn't exactly going to live up to the hype of Big Mouth, let's briefly discuss why Big Mouth was such a success. Big Mouth followed an array of unique characters as they explored themselves, hormones, and their sexuality throughout adolescence, which is something that we can all relate to. When Big Mouth first released, I was only a couple of years older than the kids in the show, and I was a pretty late bloomer, so I was right there alongside them, experiencing everything that they were. Big Mouth centered itself around a universally relatable and familiar experience, puberty, making it easy for the audience to sympathize with the characters. I was privileged enough to watch the show as it came out, being around the same age as the kids featured in it. I remember being so completely absorbed into the storylines where they were so close to home at the time. When Jesse was humiliated, I was humiliated. When Andrew was crushed, I was crushed. And alongside these characters, I too explored my complex emotions and changing body, whereas rewatching it as an adult reaped a completely different, yet just as fulfilling experience. All of that drama and all those emotions seemed so far away now, and the issues that all the characters and I thought were a big deal back then are now silly trifles. I can only imagine it's a similar experience that a parent gets when raising a teen, where you remember everything being the end of the world, but you can't relate to it anymore. Kind of creating a bittersweet nostalgia, being able to look back and laugh at what you thought was your whole world with your now fully developed frontal lobe. Besides the pure relatability of being in middle or high school, refining your relationships with your friends, family, partners, and yourself, Big Mouth also featured iconically memorable fan-favorite breakout characters, recognizable locations, perfectly timed jokes, and catchy songs. So with all that said, let's get into what Mating Season did and what it possibly could have done better. In Mating Season, we're following Josh the Bear, Ray the Raccoon, Fawn the Deer, and Penelope the Fox. Similarly to Big Mouth, the storylines normally follow a romance or a friendship between one of these four. The characters in Mating Season are basic and one note. It took me a couple of episodes to remember some of the main characters' names. They're all flat and not very well explored at all. Even at the end of the season, I felt as if none of them went through much meaningful growth, if any. And all the side characters are boring and forgettable as well. Who's supposed to be our Lola? Jeffrey the Owl? Yeah, right. So we have Josh, the whiny soft boy, desperate romantic, who was just broken up with after a long-term relationship. His storylines generally follow him fumbling a woman due to his clinginess or his lack of ability to get over his ex yet. Also, Josh seems like a weird name to me. I don't know why, but it just seems oddly generic, and I don't feel like it fits a bear. But that's just a personal opinion. Then we have Ray, the short, scrappy asshole who had a rough childhood to juxtapose Josh's more passive, gentle nature. He plays a more comic relief kind of role. We generally follow his sexual deviancy and antics throughout the season. And Fawn is a basic bitch, pretty white girl, also incredibly basic name for a deer. It's literally what I named my Webkins, Fawn. Well, to be fair, I was 4 and painfully dyslexic, so her name was technically Flen, but it was supposed to be Fawn. And also, I'm not a furry, but hear me out. And lastly, there's Penelope, whose only personality trait is lesbian. Comparing this to the cast of Big Mouth, these characters all fall flat. Even by the end of the first season of Big Mouth, we had a far better understanding of the nuanced characters who felt like full-fledged individuals and not just boiled-down stereotypes pasted onto a cartoon character. Not only were the main characters more well-rounded, but the background and side characters had their own stories and backstories going on, making the world feel so much more lived in. We got a chance to develop a connection and love for non-primary characters like Coach Steve, Lola, the ghost of Duke Ellington, Caleb, Devon, and even the kids' parents had something that they were going through. However, to Mating Season's credit, they did have Matthew's voice actor voicing a swan for an episode, which was a reference obviously to Big Mouth, and I'm pretty sure Jay's voice actor played an extra, like a wolf extra, in the background of the Truth About Canada episode as well, but I couldn't verify that because he also plays a badger a couple episodes later, and he's generally credited for that. Mating Season had locations that were confusing, uninteresting, and nondescript. Where the series took place in the woods, it doesn't give it much to work with when it comes to backgrounds. It gets redundant. In Big Mouth, I found myself taking comfort in the familiarity of the school settings and the mall. Even Nick and Andrew's room felt cozy and recognizable. It gets boring when all we're seeing is the same parts of the same boreal forest. The only exception was in the episode The Truth About Canada, which maybe I'm biased because I'm Canadian, and that was also my personal favorite episode by far. But I found the landscape and the Canadian flashbacks to be much more dynamic and memorable and just aesthetically pleasing to look at. I can't even remember the names or the lyrics of almost any of the Mating Season songs, despite watching it a week ago. Well, a week ago when I wrote this script. You know how it goes, stuff gets in the way. Meanwhile, Big Mouth gave us classics such as Sex on a Lady, Valentine's Day, Life is a Fucked Up Mess, Who Needs a Boy, Guy Town, Sucks Being Me, Disclosure, Pussy Don't Lie, The World is a Jerk-Offer's Dream, Girl We Got With Your Mom, Hot Pocket Party, It's a Condo Not a House, and not to mention the writing talents of my boy Lin-Manuel Miranda in Esperando Palitos. All of these and more, which are on my Spotify playlist, with at least one often making the top 5 most listened to on my yearly wrap. However, in Mating Season's favor, Hold On to My Feet in the episode The Passion of Reynal Skidsky is a clear homage to Let Me Be Your Wings and Thumbelina, which is truly a pleasant surprise and speaks right to my heart.
Hold on to my feet, let me be your wings.
The jokes just aren't there in comparison to Big Mouth. It's hard to even comment on this because Big Mouth jokes just hit so hard and so often, whereas Mating Season only had a couple in there that got a slight chuckle out of me. Big Mouth was clever, nuanced, perfectly timed. They had quick-witted one-liners and also running jokes and self-references that lasted seasons to pay off. The only running joke in Mating Season that I caught was pronouncing psycho as Pico, which is fine, I guess. One of the only jokes I remember liking in Mating Season was a visual gag of Ray dusting his house with a bird tied to a stick in the hot mess. And also in the final episode, The Wolf Wedding, when they start singing Who Let the Dogs Out sultrily, I thought that was pretty iconic. Who let the dogs out? But Mating Season, I noticed, used a couple of Big Mouth's jokes. I don't know if this was supposed to be self-referential, but it didn't come across like it was on purpose. Like the tramp stamp joke, for example. Gina and Connie both had tramp stamps and did the wait, what does that say gag. Connie's saying Tim Allen instead of slutwalk, and Gina's misspelling the word psycho, leading to the Pico running gag. Not to mention they both pull up their fur in the exact same way. Secondly, in Big Mouth, Mr. Lizer asks Lola, who let the dogs out, Lola? Who? When referring to his obscenely inappropriate foot rub, and in the wedding song for the Wolf Wedding, of course, also being who let the dogs out. And you may be thinking, hey, that's not the same joke at all, but the fact that this song is referenced twice is enough for me. When's the last time you heard a joke revolving around Baja Men's Who Let the Dogs Out? Answer me that. And speaking of the Wolf Wedding, the B plot was essentially the same A plot from Cafeteria Girls. In Big Mouth, Nick and Andrew meet two girls, Izzy and Misha, and ask them out, only to find that they picked the wrong girls between them. Misha is a horny little freak, perfect for Andrew, and Izzy is an awkward sweet girl, best suited for Nick. But when they try to make the switch, the girls get upset because, obviously, they are human beings and not objects, and you can't just choose to switch girls mid-make-out sesh. So, the boys learn a lesson. Meanwhile, in the Wolf Wedding episode of Mating Season, Josh and Ray meet a couple of beaver bridesmaids. Josh wants a commitment and Ray wants something fun, and surprise, surprise, the girl Josh ends up with is a horny little freak and only looking for something fun and casual, and the girl Ray ends up with wants a commitment. They try to switch, the girls get mad, because they are beavers and not objects, and alas, cannot be traded between friends. The boys learn a lesson. Now this is where I'll really get into what exactly I would personally do differently with Mating Season. Mating Season doesn't take the educational route as much as Big Mouth does. I was hoping for more of a nature mockumentary where we laughed but also learned about mating and survival habits of different animals. Like that episode of Futurama, Naturama, the cast voiced different animals as they briefly explored that animal's place in the ecosystem and their survival and mating strategies. I would have loved to have seen a cartoon that fully committed to this idea, and I think the show's creator's sense of humor would have really worked with this structure as well, while also setting it apart from the feel of Big Mouth. In that case, they could have also used the song The Bad Touch for the intro, and that would have been more memorable and iconic as well. And when the second episode of the series opened with the different animals' mating habits, I thought that for a moment the show was going to be more of an anthology style of storytelling, where every episode followed a different cast of animals voiced by the same people and explored how they interacted with each other, similarly to the aforementioned Naturama episode, which I feel would have been superior story writing-wise, while also not being confined to a single boreal forest. So there would have been a lot more material to work with. Honestly, you could probably get away with doing a whole season on birds alone. Honestly, Mating Season also explored queer culture more than it explored animal mating habits, which obviously having queer education isn't inherently a bad thing. Like, for example, I liked when they highlighted that most mammals exhibit bisexual behavior, and I would have liked to have heard that expanded upon because I don't really know what they mean by that, and I would like to. It feels more focused on being an LGBT animation rather than about animals. Like, the show could have been set in a Q-Force-esque world with queer humans, and I feel like it would make little difference in most of the episodes. Them being animals seems like more of an excuse to make an exorbitant amount of poop jokes rather than anything else, honestly. I wish they focused more on animal mating behavior education rather than queer culture education, or if that's what it wanted to do, I wish it just would have done that and committed to it, rather than being a show about animals called Mating Season. And Big Mouth explored more LGBT aspects than Mating Season, but I feel like it fits in a show about puberty, because that's obviously when kids are going to be exploring those things and figuring themselves out. I don't know if I'm crazy for asking for some realism from a cartoon that's about talking animals, but I feel like it would be more interesting if we explored LGBT connections between animals that actually happen, like we know in dolphins and some monkeys. And on top of all that, Mating Season falls into the same pitfall that Human Resources and many other adult cartoons have, in thinking that seeing cartoon characters drink, do drugs, and have sex is inherently funny within itself. Which, like, sure, if you're 14 and have never watched an adult cartoon before, it can be funny, but Big Mouth just had so much more substance to it than just cartoon characters swearing and getting drunk. At the end of the day, Mating Season had little to no chance to live up to the classic that is Big Mouth. I think the major issue lays in Mating Season trying a bit too hard to be what Big Mouth was, which didn't allow it to breathe and be its own creative and unique thing. By capitalizing on what made Big Mouth such a timeless success, Mating Season missed out on having its own identity. I've seen Mating Season referred to as Big Mouth but make it furry, which sadly feels a little bit too accurate. At least with Human Resources, we knew what we were getting was a spin-off and expected it to be, as it called itself, a cross between Big Mouth and The Office, but I don't think anybody really asked for Big Mouth but animals. Big Mouth was such a success due to its inherent relatability, which you're never going to get in a show starring animals. So instead of trying to appeal to the, oh, I've felt that way before, I feel they should have taken a completely different route and tried to teach us something that maybe we didn't know about animals through a crude parody of the Nature Channel. If you haven't already seen Naturama, I totally recommend you do, and let me know if you agree that Mating Season could have taken that concept and brought it into a full-length series. I'm Scribble, by the way.